All right, so this week I picked up my scriptures and honed in on Numbers 12 for whatever reason. And I read it and I had a lot of questions that popped up. So I'm going to guide you through what my process was, my thinking process as I read this, and the questions that came to my mind, and then some of the answers and things that I learned as I read this. So, first of all, I'm going to share with you, it's a short chapter, so I'm going to read it from the New Revised Standard Version, and then I'm going to read it again from my Jewish Study Bible too. So you're familiar with the text of what I'll be discussing. So while they were at Hazarath, Miriam and Aaron spoke against Moses because of the Cushite woman whom he had married, for he had indeed married a Cushite woman. And they said, "Has the Lord spoken only through Moses? Has he not spoken through us also?" And the Lord heard it. Now the man Moses was very humble, more so than anyone else on the face of the earth. Suddenly the Lord said to Moses, Aaron, and Miriam, "Come out, you three, to the tent of meeting." So the three of them came out. Then the Lord came down in a pillar of cloud and stood at the entrance of the tent and called Aaron and Miriam, and they both came forward. And he said, "Hear my words. When there are prophets among you, I, the Lord, make myself known to them in visions. I speak to them in dreams. Not so with my servant Moses. He is entrusted with all my house. With him I speak face to face, clearly, not in riddles, and he beholds the form of the Lord. Why then were you not afraid to speak against my servant Moses?" And the anger of the Lord was kindled against them, and he departed. When the cloud went away from over the tent, Miriam had become leprous, as white as snow. And Aaron turned towards Miriam and saw that she was leprous. Then Aaron said to Moses, "O my Lord, do not punish us for a sin that we have so foolishly committed. Do not let her be like one stillborn, whose flesh is half consumed when it comes out of its mother's womb." And Moses cried to the Lord, "O God, please heal her." But the Lord said to Moses, "If her father had but spit in her face, would she not bear her shame for 7 days? Let her be shut out of the camp for 7 days, and after that she may be brought in again." So Miriam was shut out of the camp for 7 days, and the people did not set out on the march until Miriam had been brought in again. After that, the people set out from Hazeroth and camped in the wilderness of Paran. Okay, so that was from the New Revised Standard Version. And here is the chapter from the Jewish Study Bible. When they were in Hazeroth, Miriam and Aaron spoke against Moses because of the Cushite woman he had married. "He married a Cushite woman." They said, "Has the Lord spoken only through Moses? Has he not spoken through us as well?" The Lord heard it. Now Moses was a very humble man, more so than any other man on earth. Suddenly the Lord called to Moses, Aaron, and Miriam, "Come out, you three, to the tent of meeting." So the three of them went out. The Lord came down in a pillar of cloud, stopped at the entrance of the tent, and called out, "Aaron and Miriam." The two of them came forward, and he said, "Hear these my words. When a prophet of the Lord arises among you, I make myself known to him in a vision. I speak with him in a dream. Not so with my servant Moses. He is trusted throughout my household. With him I speak mouth to mouth, plainly and not in riddles, and he beholds the likeness of the Lord. How then did you not shrink from speaking against my servant Moses?" Still incensed with them, the Lord departed. As the cloud withdrew from the tent, there was Miriam, stricken with snow-white scales. When Aaron turned toward Miriam, he saw that she was stricken with scales, and Aaron said to Moses, "O my Lord, account not to us the sin which we committed in our folly. Let her not be as one dead who Let her not be as one dead who emerges from his mother's womb with half his flesh eaten away." So Moses cried out to the Lord, saying, "O God, pray heal her." But the Lord said to Moses, "If her father spat in her face, would she not bear her shame for 7 days? Let her be shut out of camp for 7 days, and then let her be readmitted. So Miriam was shut out of the camp 7 days, and the people did not march on until Miriam was readmitted. After that, the people set out from Hazeroth and encamped in the wilderness of Paran. Okay, so if I were to read this from my modern day perspective, this chapter has some disturbing points in it, which naturally came to my mind as I read this. I was like, okay, wait a minute. Why is Miriam being punished and not Aaron? Why is Miriam's punishment so harsh? She's given leprosy or Snow White scales, and I'll talk about that. And she's shut out of camp for 7 days. So my first initial reaction to this is like, well, Miriam as a woman is really receiving kind of harsh treatment here, and I didn't like how that felt. Also, the part where it was like, if her father had spat in her face, then she would have been shut out of the camp, so let her bear that. And I'm like, her father spitting in her face, what are we talking about here? Why is that an okay thing to do for a father to spit in his daughter's face? Doesn't feel okay to me. Okay. So, and another thing that came immediately to my mind was the way that we treat leaders. So, this is coming from my Latter-day Saint perspective and background, which is just the air I breathe. I've been raised in this church. So, one thing that we've been taught is you do not criticize your leaders. And sometimes that can, at least for me, it's kind of equated into my mind as a young kid that my leaders were infallible. If I can't criticize them, then it's because they don't make any mistakes. Well, as I have grown older and matured, that belief has kind of been dashed to pieces there. I know that my leaders are human, just like me. They're totally fallible, just like me. And that's okay. I mean, that's all God has to work with is us infallible human or fallible humans. We are not infallible. We make mistakes. And same with our leaders. And so I think the greater lesson that I found as I reread this and really pondered on it was that our leaders is the way that Miriam and Aaron were talking about their leaders. So it was like they didn't go directly to Moses or directly to the Lord. It was like they were talking amongst themselves about their complaints. And okay, that could be something that could, I can apply that. It's like, yeah, the best thing to do if I have grievances, misunderstandings, complaints, or whatever about the choices that my leaders are making, is go talk to my leaders about it and go talk to the Lord about it. I am entitled to that kind of communication and that communion with the Lord, and to be able to receive an answer in that way. So I took those lessons. Also, I was wondering, I wanted to learn about, well, why was Miriam upset in the first place? And it says that she was upset because of Moses's marriage to a Cushite woman. And I'm gonna read from my from my footnotes here in the Cultural Study Bible here. It says this could mean a few different things. First of all, we know that Moses was already married to Zipporah, who is the daughter of Jethro. And so, is this somebody else that they're talking about, or is this Zipporah? And in the we honestly don't really know. In the footnotes, it says that It could be like there's some scriptures that do suggest that there is this association with Cushan and the Midianites. So it could be that Zipporah is could be called a Cushite woman. Or another option is it could be that so Cush, is it Cush or Cush? I don't even know. It says he's the first son of Ham, and that his area is identified with Nubia in modern Sudan, bordering ancient Egypt on the south. So if this connection is assumed, then Moses's Cushite woman would be a woman other than Zipporah. So that raises the question, well, is Zipporah dead? And is Miriam okay, or is she not? So is Miriam upset because Moses is taking a plural wife, and he's already married, or Zipporah's dead and then he's marrying this other lady? And there's another trait. Physically, the Cushite women could have just this dark skin, and so that could be too, that she was ethnically different than Moses, and maybe Miriam was upset about that. Honestly, we really don't know. I really liked this footnote, though. In this, it talked about ethnic purity among the ancient Israelites, and that it was something that was very important to them, but it brings out the idea that they had been given the commandment in the instructions to have one law, not just for the Israelites, but for everybody that lived in that area, was given this law. And even the people who were non-Israelites had the opportunity to obey this law given to them by their God, and basically that they could come under the covenant of that relationship, so they could be converts. So if that was specified in the Pentateuch, as it says here, then there's opportunity for conversion, people who are non-Israelite to join the faith. So it's not necessarily that Miriam is upset with her ethnicity, but it could be. And you know what? Maybe she just doesn't like this woman and she rubs her wrong. Who knows? As a woman, I think we're really sensitive to lots of things, and it's easy for us to be aware of those little nitpicky things that bug us. And we just don't know what it was that she was complaining about. But ultimately, Moses had made a choice to be with this woman, so it was Miriam complaining about this choice that Moses had made. Here's what I think is really, really important, is that Moses is not the one defending himself in this situation. It's not that he hears about it and he's like, oh, well, I'm the most humble guy around, and I have this relationship with the Lord, and I basically can do whatever I want, and you have to be okay with it. That was not what was happening. Moses was not the one justifying himself. It was the Lord who was justifying Moses and reminding Miriam of his relationship with Moses. So as I reread this, I kept thinking of it from my parental viewpoint. So I've got 6 children, and I often overhear them arguing with each other or saying whatever. And when I hear unkind things, if I hear someone say something unkind, I don't like that. I feel irritated. I feel angry. I feel distressed about that, because in my family, I want us to treat each other kindly, with kindness and respect. And so I will immediately, call the offending parties. Come on, now this isn't kind. I heard you say this. That's not kind. Da da da. And I correct their behavior. And it sounds a lot like that is what the Lord is doing here with his children. And I love that he calls them out directly. Moses, Aaron, Miriam, you three, come here. And where does he call them to? He calls them to the tent of meeting, and that was their tabernacle. Like, that was considered their temple. And that's where he wanted to speak with them. And I loved the symbolism of that. And I feel that, today, that the Lord will speak to me in his temple. If he wants to speak to me, it's like, come here. I go to the temple. When I feel that impression to go to the temple, and then I'm in the temple, I know I'm more susceptible to hearing his voice and really listening, because it's quiet. There's no distractions. It's like, oh, focus. Okay. So anyway, I think that was what happened for them here too. And I love that the Lord was speaking with them now, and that they heard and answered. So my initial response to this was like, oh, Miriam is being punished. She's being called out. When, as I pondered on it, I realized that she was being called out because of love. Just like I, as a parent, call my children out, and I'm like, I want to teach them, I want to instruct them. It's out of love, and I believe the Lord is doing the same thing in this situation. He absolutely loves Miriam and Aaron and Moses, and he wants them to be together and listen to him. And Miriam does, and Aaron does. They hear his voice, they come to the temple, they listen to his voice within the temple, and he's able to teach them. And I think it's like, it talks about God's anger being kindled. So this is another little tangent here. Anger, cultural overlay. I think we have such a negative view about anger. At least that's what I grew up with. It's not okay to be angry. And I have learned that anger is absolutely an okay feeling to feel. In fact, it shows me that a boundary has been crossed. When I feel angry, it helps me realize that I'm angry because I have a boundary that's been violated. And so either I haven't communicated a boundary clearly with somebody and they're violating it, and so now I'm angry, or I'm angry because somebody else is violating somebody else's boundary. And I think that's the same thing that is happening here. The Lord gives us boundaries and instructions as, codes of conduct, a certain way he wants us to behave. And when we don't, when we violate that, he's grieved, he's distressed, because that violation of that boundary it separates us from him. It drives us away from him, and that's not what he wants. He wants us to be close to him. So I think that's important to remember, that anger isn't a bad thing. He's not like this angry parent punishing them, but he's loving towards them, and this is him communicating with them. So, okay. Let's see. All right. Going back to like that, it was the Lord who was justifying Moses in this situation, and the choice that Moses has made. The Lord was teaching Aaron and Miriam, going, I have this relationship with Moses, that is different, and I trust him with everything. I want to show this off. This is something that I don't know very much about. I'm no expert here, but I hope to learn more about it. But I've heard of Hebrew poetry. This is an example of it. So this little section right here, can you see how it kind of is different there? In the prose, you've got this text, and then you've got this little section that is formatted differently. That's the original formatting to preserve the fact that this is Hebrew poetry. And you miss that if you're reading the King James Version. You miss the fact that this is poetry. And Hebrew poetry is cool because it emphasizes, it's reflective, and then the middle part will emphasize the main point. So I'm going to read this section again so you can see how this works. So, when there are prophets among you, I, the Lord, make myself known to them in visions. I speak to them in dreams. So that's the first part. Okay? So, the way I speak to prophets is in visions and dreams. Okay? Then I'm going to read the end part so you can see how it reflects that first part. With him I speak face to face, clearly, not in riddles, and he beholds the form of the Lord. So can you see how that reflects it? With him I speak face to face. So instead of speaking in visions, he speaks face to face. So there's that reflection of the difference. And he beholds the form of the Lord. So instead of seeing the Lord and being spoken to in a dream, he's being spoken to face in the form. So there's that reflection. And then the middle part is the most important part, that is like the highlighted part, that the way this poetry highlights it. And it's not so with my servant Moses. He is entrusted with all my house. And so that's just, the Lord is emphasizing to them his relationship with Moses. And in that other part, like earlier how it was saying that Moses is he's the most humble man on the earth. Well, that's not Moses saying that. That's the Lord saying that. And in my footnotes and stuff, some other words that it brings into that humility is devoted. And I loved that. So here's Moses. He's humble, he's dedicated, he's devoted to the Lord. And and the Lord trusts him implicitly. And that is the characteristic that I want to look for in my leaders. And I think this is a really key thing to look for. Pay attention to if a person is justifying themselves and saying, well, I'm justified for this choice that I'm making because God told me to make it. Or is the person seeking to follow the Lord, to obey the Lord, and is constantly pointing to the Lord? So I think that Moses gave that example where he was devoted to the Lord and he was obedient to him, and that was his focus, was, I want to do what you want to do, Lord. And he wasn't worried about what other people thought of him or were saying about him. He only wanted to do what the Lord wanted him to do. So that is something that I pay attention to as I am judging my leaders. And yes, I judge. I judge so that I can make righteous choices, so that I can be aware of when there's corruption, and so that I can be accountable for my actions too, so that I'm not falling prey to deception, which is out there. And this is something that speaks to my heart because I have, anyway, I won't go there. Not in this video anyway. But corrupt men, I believe, will attempt to justify themselves. Holy men and women, I didn't mean to only say men. Holy men and women will always be pointing to the Lord. They'll always be pointing to the Lord, and they'll allow the Lord to justify them. They don't need to justify themselves in the eyes of anyone else. And so that is one thing I look for, and I hear that constantly when I listen to the word of the living prophet today, who I believe is Russell M. Nelson. When I listen to him speak, he is constantly pointing me to the Lord. He's always reminding me, turn to the Lord, turn to the Lord, turn to the Lord. Learn to listen to his voice, learn to hear him, go to the Lord. And so I trust I trust that. I trust him in that leadership position because he is pointing me to the Lord, and I can have my own relationship with the Lord. And anyway, okay. So I want to move into this, the way that Miriam was punished. So it says in some scriptures that she was given leprosy. And the way, as I studied that out, so leprosy as we know it today is also known as Hansen's disease. And there's not an indication that that illness, that disease existed in ancient Israelite time. And so when it says leprosy, that's not what we think of as leprosy. What it is, and the one I think in the Jewish Bible is when it said the white scales, and that is more accurate there. And that's like psoriasis. Have you ever read the description of that? It's like these white, flaky scales on the skin, and it's a skin condition. And so likely that is what Miriam was cursed with. And so in my mind, I was just pondering, like, well, why a skin disease? Why a skin disease? So let's say it was psoriasis. Why that? And as I studied up about it and read some things that people had written about it, and I learned that psoriasis is this disease that is really like, even dermatologists, so even the professionals don't really understand it. They don't know how to cure it. They don't know why it happens. And it can flare up at any time and it can go away at any time. So it's really unpredictable and kind of like up to the gods, right? When it's going to happen. And so I thought that was interesting that this was the disease that it was like completely out of her control to there was nothing that she could do to remedy this disease. She just had to bear with it. And I think there's also with the scales, like having scales that are gonna be falling off, it's symbolic of death. And it even said, like, it even compared her to being like a stillborn baby whose flesh is half eaten off the body. Kind of a morbid picture there visually. But the Israelites, the death was very symbolic to them of impurity. Now, I think I loved this concept actually as I pondered more on it and learned more about it, of the contrast, impurity versus purity. This is actually a very sacred and holy concept that we find within the scriptures and within the beliefs of the ancient Israelites. And we've been taught that the Lord, anyway, as Christians, we believe that the Lord of the Old Testament is Jesus Christ. And when he came, the New Testament, he replaced that law that the Israelites lived by. But the law that he had given them as the Lord throughout the Old Testament times was meant to prepare them to understand the law that he would give them, the new and higher, holier covenant, which is that he would atone for their sins. So everything in the Old Testament is meant to be reflective of this principle of atonement. And this particular impurity, purity thing is reflective of this. Let me illustrate why. So death, anytime there's death, there's rebirth. There's this cycle of death and life. And this is important to pay attention to, and it's important to the Israelites. They believe in this. And this isn't all that unfamiliar to us either, because we practice this ritually every week as we renew our baptismal covenants. And the baptism itself is symbolizing a death as we go under the water, and as we come back out of the water, life. And so, and then every time we are taking the sacrament, we are reminded of that covenant, that we made at baptism, and of that principle of death and life. It's spiritual death. Our sins, they cause a separation or a spiritual death from the Lord. And through the atonement of Jesus Christ, there is life, there is new life, there's rebirth and purity. So that is the symbolism here with this skin disease that Miriam is cursed with. But is it really a curse, or is it an opportunity for her to strengthen her relationship with the Lord? I am going with the latter because it's very symbolic of her. Anyway, okay, so the whole father spitting on his daughter. Okay, what does that mean? One of the footnotes that I read said that spitting may spit in her face may indicate contempt, insult, or impurity. And so there's that concept of impurity. So let's just go with the culture of the time. Let's say a daughter had made a choice that separated her from the covenant standard of her people or her father or her religion, you know. Well, that would mean that she is separated. She's in a state of impurity. And so to indicate that, there's that spitting in the face to indicate that, well, you need to spend time repenting for that. It's a repentance. It's a changing. It's allowing. It's allowing for rebirth. Before it's like this ritual period of becoming pure before you can return. So just like that, it's mirroring this. So God is saying, all right, let's shut her out of the camp for 7 days. And I think this is significant because when you think about the roles of women, likely in a camp, they're going to be caring for children, they're going to be cooking, women do the tasks of living. Well, if Miriam is shut out of camp, she no longer has to do those tasks. And so she is separated from that. And this is an opportunity. Sometimes I wish I could be shut out from my home camp for 7 days. Please, that would be awesome. Anyway, I think of how much of an opportunity it would be if I were shut out from my daily tasks for 7 days and I had the opportunity to just commune with the Lord. And God, that would be amazing. I would love that. So I think this is not so much as a punishment as an ostracization, like, oh, you're so bad, you have to get out. You know, it's not that. It's an opportunity for her to draw close to the Lord and to understand this principle of atonement and rebirth and purity. And that is a beautiful principle, and it's one that we strive to remember that principle every week as we're taking the sacrament, that rebirth through Christ. And how I know it wasn't like they weren't ostracizing her is they waited for her. They weren't throwing her out. They're like, okay, we're gonna wait for her. We're not gonna go on until she's back with us. So they waited for her. And also, can I just point out, Miriam is a prophetess. She is in a significant position of leadership there with her brothers Aaron and Moses, and I think that's so awesome. And it speaks a lot to the Lord's relationship with women and how he loves women. So anyway, these are my thoughts on Numbers 12, the evolution of my thoughts from it being a little offensive to actually really reminding me of the opportunity to draw close to the Lord and to ponder on the atonement and how Christ makes me clean. And he is the only thing that can make me clean. I can't do it on my own. He makes me clean. And I am so grateful for my faith and my testimony in the atonement of Jesus Christ. It brings me great joy and hope to know that that skin disease, so to say, isn't going to stick. It's not going to be permanent. I can be clean through his atonement. I'm so grateful for his love and that amazing gift to me. So, anyway, if you have any further comments or questions or insights, please share them. I want this to feel like a community where we can learn from each other, and I'm excited to learn from what you have to share as well and what you can teach. So, have a great week.